how would you like to heal your relationships with the Be Love principles that Diane Haworth has created? And what's so special about Diane is that she's a heart-centered success coach, teacher, author, and founder of the Be Love principles. And she blends traditional coaching with deep spiritual truths to help people create lives filled with peace, love, and joy. And she hosts the Empowered Spiritual Path membership. So, Diane, tell us more about how can someone heal their relationships. Heal Podcast with Lily Patrascu shares longevity and anti-aging techniques to stay young forever, increase energy, overcome addiction, and live your longest, best life ever. Shared by world's most innovative, alternative, and traditional health, thought leaders, healers, and doctors. Discover quantum healing strategies to heal your mind, body, and soul.
Well, thank you very much for having me today. You know, if you think about it, our entire life is about relationships. Interpersonal relationships, relationships we have with our family, our friends, our colleagues, relationships with our body, relationships with world events, which we don't think of it that way, but really, if you think about how you relate to the news and events going on around you, you have a relationship. The most important relationship I think that you have is with your own thoughts, your attitudes. And often we allow fear to color those. And I mean, I'm the worst, right? That's why I started looking at alternatives, ways to think. And that led me to spirituality, which ultimately led me to understanding how to use divine love to really access that wisdom we each have in our own hearts. And for me, I do it through this process called the Be Love principles.
Thank you. Tell us about the 4 guiding principles of the Becoming Love principles, and how does knowing and implementing these principles?
Yeah.
Okay, let me repeat that. How does knowing and implementing the Be Love principles affect and impact the quality of the relationships you have with yourself and with the rest of the world?
All great questions. First of all, I want to just share that what this does at its core is help shift your perspective. So, for example, I know that I thought I knew everything about how to raise a child until I became a mother. And my attitude and my understanding shifted because my experience shifted. So what the principles do for everything, no matter what relationship we're talking about, is help you go from what we call a more personality-driven or ego-based perspective, which is very limited, right? It's all about what you can see, to a more expanded understanding. So think about it this way. When you're walking on this sidewalk at any city, you can see, right, what's going on, but you have a limited perspective. You go to an elevator and you go to 100th story, right, and you look out on the city, you have an elevated perspective. At the core, the Be Love principles take you from a human perspective to a more divine, expanded one. So that's how they work. And each of them individually are extremely, they're empowering, but used together as a process, they really are transformational. So let's just run through those one by one. And just for fun, let's use the focus of business, because this is what I do. I think about using each of these principles on my own personal coaching business. So principle 1 is greet everyone with an open heart without an agenda. So I'll say it again. Greet everyone with an open heart without an agenda. Now, as that relates to business, if I am going to have, let's say, an upcoming clarity call with a potential coaching client, and in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, they need this, they need that, I'm going to sell them this, that, whatever it is, I'm not really being present in that conversation because I already have an agenda. So what this reminds us to do is to come into all conversations, all relationships. Whether you're speaking with someone, you're watching a video, you're out in the street, with the most authenticity that you can have, right? So it's without an agenda. I'm just coming in, just absolutely open. So that's the first one. The second one says, see the divine essence in everyone and everything. Now, I don't know about you, but that was a tough one for me to swallow at times, right? Because again, if I went into a situation in business or anywhere else thinking this person is this, or that, I couldn't see that spark of the divine that's in them or in the situation. My personal belief is that love, spirit, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, is present everywhere and everything. And when I have approached something that seems traumatic, and we all have traumas and real tragedies in our life, when I go into those, processing whatever emotion I need to, but I am asking, show me the divine here, then a completely different scenario opens up to me. And then I relate to it differently, right? So that's the second one. The third one is forgive quickly, completely, and unconditionally. Now, this is the big one, right? The one everybody goes, no, I'll do the other ones, but this one's not so much. It's not easy. What I have found is when I simply have the willingness to forgive, one thing that does is it opens up the door for me to see things differently. And when I use the principles as a process, I've brought some situation in my business to mind and I'm said, show me how to see this with an open heart, show me the divine essence. Then by the time I get to the forgiveness piece and I'm asking inwardly, show me my forgiveness opportunities here. What I find is something that I thought was very linear opens up. And there's a softening around any resentments that I might have had or regrets, because we all have those. And I can see things differently. So the fourth one is remember you never left the light of the all. Now, when people go to my website or they view my videos, they'll get a comprehensive way of how to work through this process. But what that fourth one does is remind me that the same light and love that's in me is in you and in anyone that has ever walked this planet or ever will walk the planet. That helps me see the oneness, and it opens the door for cooperation and compassion. And I don't know about you, but I think that in the world right now, cooperation and compassion would be something we all could do a little more of. What do you think?
Thank you. I do agree, but one thing that comes to mind is that let's say you go into a meeting, or let's say something very practical that has happened to me, where I had a podcasting guest, like
Yep.
I always look at how can I be really helpful to everyone, and how can I be like a connector, and how can I leverage my skills and the fact that I am attractive to so many different opportunities, and how can I share those opportunities to as many people as possible, especially phenomenal podcasting guests, right? So I email this lady, for example, and say, I would love to invite you to 3 investment summits as a speaker. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And she messages me back and says, stop. Right. So like, I'm instantly like, my guard is up. I feel horrible. Right. So how do you cope with, yes, you can say I can come from all of these different principles of trying to be love and to be understanding and to be compassionate and to be helpful and everything. But when someone doesn't reciprocate that, like you could try to kind of, you can say, portray it and be nice and be kind and be helpful and almost like be a people pleaser as well. And then see that is not reciprocated. Like, how do you cope with that? How do you create this resilience in the face of the world not reflecting back what you're giving?
So first of all, thank you for that question, because I get varieties of that question a lot, and it's a good one. As a matter of fact, it's really a good one, because you're thinking, I'm going to do the best I can, right? I'm here to serve this person, and I got spit in the face. It feels like somebody just slapped me. And I understand what that feels like. What I can tell you is when I am able, and it's not 100%, but when I am able to offer services, investment opportunities like you were talking about, or whatever it is, without an agenda, which means without me being attached to the outcome. If I am not attached to the outcome, then I'm not hurt. So the way that it works for me, and it would be, different for everybody. And I've also been working with these for years, so that there's a difference to it. My underlying belief is that everything is happening for my highest and best, and for the highest and best of everyone. Now, in situations like you just mentioned, I've had things like that happen, right? I've been in business for 18 years and I've had lots of those. What I found is years later, sometimes those very same people will come back up and say, you know what? I'm ready to talk to you now. So we're always planting seeds. And in my mind, we're any kindness, any act of compassion is planting a seed. And we have no idea when or if it will bloom. Most of the time, I have to say, we're not going to be privy to watching any act of kindness or true intention of service necessarily bloom. Doesn't mean that it doesn't. It just means it's not with us. If I've ever had a clarity session with someone and they ended up with another coach, then I am absolutely sure that their soul has made the right decision for them. And to me, that's an act of service, just even reaching out. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. But the thing is, like, how do you cope with the hurt of that? Like, for example, I've had thousands of people that have attended my Speakers Are Leaders workshop. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I've had out of those thousands of reviews of like excellent reviews of people saying, oh my God, you changed my life. It was amazing. I now have, this job that pays me so much more, and I feel so much more respected. And I feel so much more confidence, and like so many, like these wows, superlatives. Right. And then I see some of them, after me, let's say pausing, events and so on, like 2 years later, they're unsubscribed. And it's like, they don't even know probably like how much progress I've had, where I could help them even further now. Like, and it feels hurtful to see that. Like, how do you cope with that hurt? Is it that you have to just kind of imagine that actually they chose the path that they're supposed to be on, and it's a good one, and in your heart that as long as you did the best that you could to help them, they chose the best path, and you're not supposed to like be attached to that at all? Is that the solution?
It's certainly part of it, but what I would also say is that we are human and we get hurt and we experience grief and sadness, and sometimes we're just mad. And that's part of being human. And I don't want anybody to think, you do this work and we end up riding unicorns, jumping over rainbows all the time, because that doesn't happen. What happens for me, and I'll just speak for myself, when I get hurt or I feel insulted, for example, because sometimes you feel that way, I will sit with myself, feel whatever I'm feeling, because I don't think we're supposed to pretend we're not hurt or sad or insulted. So I want to feel it. And then I'll say to myself, okay, who's feeling that? Is it the real me? For me, the real me is that divine spark of God that is not attached to, right? It's my personality and my ego that's insulted. And she can be very insulted. But once I realize, okay, it's not that it's right or wrong to be insulted or hurt. It's what are we going to do with that? For me, the way we are invited to live our lives is by understanding that we are divine creatures in a human body. So if we can remember we're divine, to my mind, we're made of love and we're human, then where that intersects, right? That's where we live our optimal life. So I would go into meditation or journal, and I would say, help me understand, what invitation is this hurt bringing to me? What deeper understanding am I being invited to? I'm also a student of A Course in Miracles, and one of the lessons in the course that I really love says, all things are lessons God would have me learn. That's the way that I look at it. I don't pretend I'm not hurt because I don't think that's healthy and I don't think it's true, right? That's not being authentic. But I am recognizing, the real me is not hurt, but certainly my personality, my ego is hurt. And I wonder what I'm being invited to deepen into. So that's the way that I do it.
Thank you. So imagine that you feel rejected, you feel abandoned, you feel unappreciated, all of those feelings that you are likely to feel immediately. Are you just supposed to bring almost like an awareness to that so that you're changing the perspective? And is that the way to always choose love? Because I think it's inevitable that you would feel rejected, unloved, feeling like you did something wrong. And for example, for me, every time this kind of thing happens, I feel really bad. Like I want to hide. I want to, it's not inviting me to kind of be bigger. It's inviting me to kind of be smaller, to hide, to be smaller, to do less.
So what you're talking about, I believe, is patterns, right? Like you said, it's inviting me to be less, to feel smaller, right? So there are a variety of ways that my clients and I work with something like that. One of the things that I do is get in and have my clients do is actually dialogue with the part of yourself that feels insulted, that feels hurt, that feels small. Ask that part of you, what do you need? What is it that you haven't gotten here? What is it that you need? Now, that sounds all airy-fairy, but getting in touch with that part, that human part of you, really does help. Now, I do it as much as possible from that real foundation of love, right? It's almost like I will sit with myself or have my clients will do an exercise like this, where I'll have them imagine that the part of them that feels so hurt, that they can dialogue with that. And they just say, what is it you need? What are you trying to tell me? What would you like to have happened? It's amazingly powerful to do that. And if you do that from the most loving, tender place, instead of telling yourself you're bad or you shouldn't feel that way, that's not going to help at all. But how could you be more tender with those feelings, right? And how could you, and it's not going to be your head that answers this, by the way. What I'll have my clients do is connect to their heart. And sometimes that would be breathing in and out, having them breathe in through the back of their heart and out through the front. So they ground in this. Your personality is always going to feel hurt and is always going to feel that need to be praised. I mean, who doesn't like that? Who doesn't want a 5-star review? I mean, I do. And I realize that's the personality part of me that wants it. And I'm okay with that. But when I can really ground down into my heart, that's where the real answers come from. That's where the Be Love principles come in. To be able to go into your heart, go through that process. Maybe there's a forgiveness opportunity there. I don't know. Maybe there's a oneness opportunity. But instead of processing it in the part of you that has felt the hurt, you go into the part of you that's divine. It's where your inner wisdom is. That's where all your right answers are. That's where the peace comes from. Does that make sense?
Yes. And how do I start seeing the divinity of another person who scammed me or hurt me or cheated on me, betrayed me, lied to me? How do I see the divinity of that person? Is it that I need to look at it as an opportunity to learn about, like, what should I be learning? Something like I should be learning self-love and I should be learning self-appreciation. And if I don't, it's like this kind of lesson will keep repeating until I do learn it in multiple different people. And when I do learn it, then I don't have to experience this hurt. Is that the idea?
I would slightly shift that just a tiny bit. So when we're considering any course of action, like I should do this or whatever, I want people to always concentrate on how they feel. How does it feel in the body? Is what you're describing, whoever, whatever conversation we're having, is it making you feel constricted or does it feel expansive? Anything coming from the ego is going to feel shut down, the words that you used a few minutes ago. If it is coming from the divine, and that's just my word for love, universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it, it's going to feel very open and expansive. That's the first thing. In the kind of scenario that you just described, and I have worked with people who have been raped, have been victims of horrific crime, I want to say this. Love does not ask you ever to be a victim, nor does it ask you to be a doormat. Healthy love has boundaries, right? Because we're human. So even though everybody's a child of God, I don't want that child of God hurting me physically or stealing my money. That's a personality to personality thing. So for us to understand, we need to take whatever human physical steps are necessary. If there's someone who's done something to you and you need to call the police, call the police. Take them to trial. Do whatever love is telling you to do. And love's not going to tell you to not take care of that kind of a matter, right? Where the divine essence comes in is when I have looked at someone who has done, in my estimation, done me a gross injustice. I am looking at them as an adult, typically, and I'm looking through those eyes of judgment. When I can relax and remember that at some point in time, they were born an innocent baby, just like I was, authentic and pure. That helps me soften a little bit, and it helps me get to that forgiveness piece. Now, in the workbook that people can get for free if they go to my website, one of the things I have them do is practice each principle for a week. So on the week that I started trying to see the divine essence in everybody, and let me tell you something, I thought this was, it's my stuff, and I thought it was crazy. But I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. Everywhere I went that week, if I was walking on the street, I would say inwardly, show me the divine essence in that tree, in that flower, in that dog, in that car, in the sky. When people have had trauma, and what you were talking about are people who have sustained real trauma, it is often easier and quicker to recognize the divine essence in a flower. That's easier than in somebody that's hurt you. So I would say, start, if you're really interested, start in nature. Start looking at the divine essence in a beautiful work of art. And once that opens you up a little bit, I have been able to, my clients have been able to, and my students have been able to, even in the horrific situations that many of us have endured in their life, they have been able to see the divine essence in someone, and they've actually been able to get to a place of forgiveness, which frees them, right? It has nothing to do with the person or situation you're forgiving. It's really about your own energy. I hope that makes sense.
Yes. And how can someone stop getting triggered by annoying people? So, for example, like my mom, my mom is a Titan. Okay, she's a divine Titan, and she is amazing on like so many levels. Okay, she is like, she looks amazing. She's beautiful. She's smart, but she's one of the most annoying people in my life, because every time she comes to visit, she always talks about how chubby I am, how I'm unhealthy, how she wishes I was a teacher, and how she wishes I was more like my brother. And it's just like, she triggers me on so many levels. And even hearing the sentence that she always says, like, it is what it is, almost like there's this thing where everything is never going to work out the way she wants to, and it's like she just has to like begrudgingly accept it. And like, we have such differing views that I find her one of the most triggering people on the planet. But at the same time, I'm aware of like, she's one of the most amazing people on the planet as well. So how do I stop getting triggered by people in my life?
Again, that's a great question. And I will say that I think that our families are uniquely qualified to plant all those seeds. And it's like they know what buttons to push, right? They just know. In my own life, I have those triggers as well. And one of the things that helped me, and it's been a process, it's not like, believe me, if you could just take a pill and it would be all over, I'd find those pills. I'd buy a giant bottle at Costco, but I've never found one. What I have realized is the more I start my day in peace, through meditation, through journaling, through the practices I have, through reciting the Be Love principles, which I do every day, the more at peace I am in general. And when that occurs, I notice that, and I'm thinking about somebody in particular, what used to trigger me at a level 10 came down to an 8, and then it came down to a 6, and then it came down to a, oh, isn't that just her way? And it was just like, it's just not a trigger anymore. Now, I will say if I'm tired or if I'm not feeling well, right, your resistance kind of goes down, then still I can get triggered, but I find that it is less intensive and it's also way less often than it used to be. And for me, it's because I think I've really dedicated my life, my passion is to, as best as possible, day by day, hour by hour, moment by moment, live from that heart-centered place and live from there. I find that even working with that first principle, right, that greet everybody with an open heart without an agenda. In my case, the person I'm thinking about, if I just saw this person's name, I didn't have to talk to them. I would immediately have my agenda, right? Oh, I know what they're going to say to me, and I'm going to say this, and blah, blah, blah. I was not greeting them with an open heart. So what I realized was energetically, right, all the things we think are out here in our energetic field, I was already setting myself up for conflict. And when I removed my expectations of conflict, I noticed that this person changed. Now, if I can share one more thing, during COVID, which was horrible for all of us, right? I ran a case study on the Be Love principles. And one of the people in my case study was a nurse. So you know what kind of stress they were under, right? And at the beginning of the study, it lasted 3 months. Every week they sent me a survey sheet where they were rating where they were in different things, and they were writing stuff. And at the beginning, it was like, I work with idiots, and they're so incompetent, and I don't know what they're doing, and I don't know why they still work there, and they should get fired, and blah, blah, blah. And about, I don't know, 6 weeks in, I get this survey that says, everybody's really straightened up. I don't know what happened, but, they seem to know what they're doing now. It's been great. Did they change? But she had been doing the principles, reciting them and working with them at least 5 times a week. She's the one that changed. And to me, that was it. Second survey was actually, we were right at the shutdown time. It was horrific. And her perception, her experience of the people that had irritated her so much, it had completely shifted. So all of these changes, that's really one of the keys. What's actually the biggest key. These changes, these shifts we want to make to this exterior part of our life, it all starts here. That's the good news and that's the bad news, because, we would love for everybody else to just straighten up. But the good news is it is entirely within our power to change our experience of the world. And all we have to do is be a little willing to do so. And the Be Love principles are one tool, I should say, that you can use to do that.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can connect with you.
They can go to beloveprinciples.org, and you can find out there's plenty of free resources. There's meditations, there's workbooks that you can go through. There's even coloring sheets. And if you want to know about all my programs, my books, my YouTube channel, you can go to morefromdiane, DIANE.com, and all that information will be there.
Thank you so much. Follow me for more interviews with world's most innovative health change makers to live your healthiest life ever.